Good morning to everyone. As we'll give a few seconds, excuse me, to let everyone join. But glad you're here today for the May 2022 Cybersecurity Forum. We'll let folks file in, get on the system, and then we will kick off for what should be a very interesting learning event this morning. So, looking forward to it.
Excellent.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. Welcome to the May 2022 Cybersecurity Forum. I'm Damon Nix. I'm the Director of Business Development at InTech Washington, the state of Washington's Manufacturing Extension Center. It's our hope at InTech Washington that these cybersecurity forums will be a resource for you, hopefully a resource among many that help you build a stronger and proactive cybersecurity program. Our goal with this forum has and continues to be to build a community. Connecting manufacturers, businesses, experts in cybersecurity, along with our economic development partners and community-based resources here in the state of Washington to help you build a strong future in cybersecurity. A goal of this forum is to build a dialogue and ongoing communication. So offering the ability for you to ask and get answers for questions on the current state of cybersecurity and the unique challenges that you face as a manufacturer. So I encourage you today, get involved in the conversation, engage, ask questions, join the chat, follow the chat too. There's a lot of good information on acronyms you may not know, that kind of stuff pops up, which is really helpful. You use this as an opportunity to build your network. There are colleagues from other manufacturers here, and certainly connect with the experts, panelists, and other partners who are here today. So we want this gathering to be a component of your cybersecurity success story. To that end, if you're new to the forum or just haven't checked it out yet, I encourage you to go to InTech Washington's YouTube channel. There you can find every episode of the Cybersecurity Forum, both seasons 1 and seasons 2, last year and this year. So definitely there's a ton of great learning and information and resources that you can glean from those videos. So glad that we have those available, and we'll continue to make those available going forward. So our topic today is smart investments in cybersecurity, how to save money and get the right help. I'll say that cost or perceived cost of implementing cybersecurity is definitely one of the biggest barriers for a lot of companies to take action, particularly for many small manufacturers. Certainly at InTech Washington, that is a concern of our team, something we talk about regularly, because cybersecurity isn't just something it's not a luxury. It's really a necessity for all manufacturers, all businesses, regardless of industry or supply chain ties. And so we're constantly looking for ways to lower the cost of implementation, make it more sustainable, and hopefully one day ubiquitous. And we do have a couple of approaches we're working on. So if you're interested, don't hesitate to reach out. But I am looking forward today to learning more from our experts about cost-effective ways and money-saving ways to implement and right-size cybersecurity programs for your company. So looking forward to learn from our experts, and looking forward to the collective input of everyone that's gathered here as well. Before we get started, I want to again thank PNDC for being our partner in producing and hosting these cybersecurity forums. Thank you to the entire PNDC team. And with that, I will pass it over to Carly to share a few words and introductions. Thank you again for joining us today.
Absolutely. Damon, thank you so much. We here at PNDC really appreciate this partnership and being able to host these cybersecurity forums with you. I'm Carly Keith, the Events and Marketing Manager for PNDC, and PNDC is the membership and trade association for the Pacific Northwest defense and security industry. We're thrilled to partner with InTech Washington on these programs, as we know how important cybersecurity is to make sure that we have a secure and resilient supply chain in defense and so many other industry sectors. We want to take a moment this morning and welcome some really special guests that we have. We have some individuals here from Senator Ron Wyden's office, as well as Congressman Adam Smith's office. Both of these groups are such great supporters of PNDC and the work that we do. And we just want to thank you both so much for joining us today and for being a part of this cybersecurity forum and listening in on the work that we're doing here today. We also want to give a good shout out to our partner PNAA. Dale King is on the line here today, and so make sure you give him a shout out in the chat. Speaking of the chat, just a few housekeeping items before we kick off the program. Please introduce yourself in the chat. Share your LinkedIn, make some really great connections. We will be sharing acronyms in the chat throughout the program, so keep your eye out for that. Should you hear anything that you're not necessarily sure what we are referring to, my colleague Bailey Simpson is here on the line to try and keep things a little more clear when it comes to the acronym jargon that we throw out. At the end of the program, we encourage you to download the chat, which you can do so yourself by hitting the 3 ellipses by the towards the right side of the chat box. And so we encourage everyone today to be just really interactive, really engaging. We have several different, I want to make sure I'm on the correct, our slide today. So first we have, we're going to be hearing from Jerry Leishman. We're going to hear a presentation from him here in just a few minutes. And then our cybersecurity experts today on our panel are Tori Hoyt with Black Oak Security, Raj Sidhu with InTech, and Sam Leishman with Crown Infosec. So we are so thrilled to have these experts here joining us today. And we also, just to note, we are recording today's program and it will be available on Impact Washington's YouTube channel. So make sure to stay tuned with that. And this is actually something that we will share with you attendees after the program is over. So no more from me. It's time to get down to business. It is my pleasure to introduce Jerry Leishman. He is the National Director of Regulatory Compliance at the CORTAC Group. Jerry works with the National Defense Industry Base, DIB, organizations of all sizes to transform ideas into world-class products and solutions. I could go on and on a few more things, but want to get right into Jerry's presentation. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that he can share his. And Jerry, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, it's a pleasure to meet you all. Let me bring my screen up here, and I'm going to keep it real casual today. Really, our goal is Damon called out, is CMMC, cybersecurity. There's just lots of regulations coming our way, and I know there are a lot of other pressures on our businesses that aren't related to regulations that we'll probably talk about during our panel, like cyber insurance and finance and just business disruption. Have nothing to do with regulations. It's about running your business day to day. And when you start looking at your businesses, you have to understand how cybersecurity is a cost of doing business as we mature into this next generation of cyber threats, cyber attacks, and we see it every day. But there's lots of fear out there for folks because they really don't know how to respond to it. They can't see it. They know physical security. They have locks on their door. Some people have 2 locks. Some people have bolt locks. I mean, it's easy for us to see and implement, and we've been doing that for many years. But now, how do you secure from cyber attacks to your house, to your business, to your enterprises? It's hard to know. Where do I start? What's the right sized solution for my business based on what I do, my environment, my people? And there's a lot of questions that need to be answered to ultimately get to a place where you feel secure as an organization and personally. So we want to just kind of talk about, well, what are some of those affordable solutions to help bring down some of the fear of, this is going to bankrupt me, or I'll never be able to figure this out. I can't afford this, so I'm just basically at risk every day going to work or even being at home of getting breached, going out of business. So there's a lot of fear out there. So hopefully today, this panel will share a few ideas. And if you're a do-it-yourselfer, there's lots of free stuff out there. So I'll talk about a couple of those things. Sometimes though, if you're not a do-it-yourselfer and you just want somebody to take the problem and make it go away, an easy button, you're gonna have to pay somebody to do that. But those options are out there. I mean, there's like buying a car. It's like you can go buy a standard car, get you to a place from A to B, or you can get one with extra features that actually has air conditioning, especially in the summer. It's nice to have. And then there's the Cadillac, right? You're going in style, you look good. You can talk to your friends about how good you're looking. So there are different options based on ultimately the risk level that you're willing to take and how much you're willing to spend. So lots of complexity, but there's it comes down to education and choice for everybody. So let's jump in. Stop me anytime. And Carly, maybe if you see questions that come up, feel free to just interrupt me and we'll go forward. So a little bit about me. Carly mentioned it. I am actually a CMMC provisional assessor. So I'm one of the 100 that were originally qualified to do assessments. That was under CMMC 1.0. We're now under 2.0. They're redoing the whole thing, but still a qualified assessor. So I understand what the government's looking for, and our goal, or my goal, is to help you understand that, what the term institutionalization means, right? So you as an organization can figure out, well, what does that mean? Does that mean documentation that goes from policy to procedures, down to the tools, down to the workflows? Yeah, the answer is yes. All of that is what ultimately folks that carry controlled and classified information at level 2, which is technical information that the government, DoD, wants to protect. You really have to invest in that. And we're finding that out right now through some of the early audits from the DIBCAC, which is the DoD agency that's going to certify all of these third-party auditors or C3PAOs. They're going down to the lowest level of requirements to make sure everything is ticking and tying. So they're serious this time, or they're not serious this time. They are serious to make sure that the auditors are assessed at the lowest level, that they really understand the level of breadth and depth that are necessary, that they're going to bring into the industry. So that's just a key point that I wanted to put out there, folks. You know, the government's serious about making sure they're protecting their data going forward where they haven't been in the past. So change is coming there. But I'm involved with several organizations at that level. So I'm bringing some insights at the national level into the Pacific Northwest to help organizations here understand what these cybersecurity requirements could be from a regulatory standpoint, as well as business continuity. And really my goal, as well as Impact Washington and PNDC, PNAA, is really to have the Northwest become the most secure and low risk location for the government to do business. So bring your business to the Northwest DC area. And that's what we're here to do, is to help get you guys educated so you can become a very attractive supplier to not only the DoD, but the federal government as these requirements roll out. So that's kind of the goal and why I'm here educating and sharing today. So what we're going to talk about, you know, why is this happening? Some of this is going to be a rehash, but I think we all need to understand why we're even talking. Going to talk a little bit about CMMC 2.0. I don't want to spend a lot of time, but I want to set the baseline and the different levels of cybersecurity they're going to need to demonstrate, depending on the level of data that you need to manage. And also it's applicable to, even if you're not a defense supplier, understanding what the cybersecurity standards are out there that the world is moving to, so you can get ahead of that game and provide yourself kind of a baseline. What are the basic things I need to be doing to be cyber hygiene protected? How do I stay ahead of the guy at the end that the bear's chasing, right? You don't want to be the last guy in the line. You want to move ahead and get up front, so you're at least somewhat secure and you're moving in the right direction. And then then I'm going to go into some affordable steps. How to look at where you're at in your maturity journey, or your maturity of your journey for cybersecurity, and say, well, based on that, there are different resources out there, including Impact Washington, PNDC, that are that you get as being part of the member, or they're free, or they're government funded, like CISA. We're going to talk a little bit about those, and that comes back to do it yourself. The resources are there. It's just how do you put it all together and make it happen? And we'll talk a little bit about that. And then key takeaways, things that I think are really important for small business to understand about the reality of the world we're living in. So that's the goal today. And I got like 15 minutes, so I'm going to go through it pretty fast. Bottom line, cybersecurity is a national security concern for our country, our kids, our children, for future generations, around military advantages, economic prosperity, and just our critical infrastructure, public safety. It's happening every day. If you look at here, the second slide, you know, there's a couple breaches, but you know, just look. Just this last week, there was a medical center, well, actually it's 2 weeks now, in Framingham, Massachusetts, Metro West Medical Center. They were hacked, they were breached. They went to a code black, which means that they can't do business. And anybody inside the hospital is, you know, they're stuck. That, I mean, that's public safety, and there is a lot of risk at that. It's probably a global criminal trying to ransomware it, but if it was a nation state trying to disrupt our critical infrastructure like they're doing in Ukraine, you know, that's happening too. So it's happening every day. And you can see SolarWinds, Colonial Pipeline, JBS Meats, McDonald's, you name it. And it's even gotten so important that even 60 Minutes 2 weeks ago did a whole thing on cybersecurity attacks. So you know when I hit 60 Minutes, it's got to be important. So it's happening today. It's everywhere. So you can't ignore it. Oh, you can't ignore it for sure. but you have choice. You can be informed, make informed business decisions, or you can ignore it and hope it doesn't happen to me. But that approach is not going to work for you in the long term. We'll spend a little bit of time talking about that. So that's what's going on today in the world and why we're even here. So DoD said, well, gosh, that's not working for us anymore. If you're in the supply chain, you got DFARS, 7012, moving to CMMC 2.0, you got ITAR, lots of sensitive information out there. And they've provided a framework to help companies understand what it means to be cybersecure and what the new expectations of them will be as they move forward. And it will be a requirement to be pre-qualified for contracts. So if you're not doing it, you're going to lose your contracts. So really, it's not the IT issues anymore. It's really become a business risk, the cost of doing business. So you got to really understand that. And really savvy owners will say, wow, if the government is changing the rules and I embrace it and I do it well, suddenly I've got a competitive advantage over my laggards that are complaining, crying, saying, no, I can't afford it, blah, blah, blah. They're going to be left behind. So in one way, this is the largest market opportunity for companies in decades, because the government's changing the rules and early adopters will take advantage of that. Not only the DoD, but federal government and with your customers. Come to me, I secure your data, I'm low risk, you can trust me. It's all about trust and relationship, as it always is. So CMMC, for those that are in the supply chain, the DoD is doing some rulemaking. That's expected to be done in May of 2023. So they've given you a year to kind of get your act together. And we'll go a little bit about what that might look like, but they've given you another year, even though they've told you for the last 5 years that you should be doing it. You've had DFARS flow downs, you're self-attesting. And if you say you're doing it and you're not, suddenly there's a False Claims Act. And if you will watch the news, Aerodyne, I think it was last week, settled with the Department of Justice on a False Claims Act for DFARS. So it's here and now, it's relevant, and the DOD is trying to enforce to effectively scare people into taking action, because there's 300,000 suppliers out there in the defense supply chain. You know, it's easy to say, oh, they won't see me, or, you know, I'm too small, but it's not about size, complexity, it's about what data you have. And if you're lying to the government, suddenly there's lots of ramifications and enforcements that are going to be coming your way. And the DoD is turning up the dial to force behavioral change, cultural change, security by design. And that's their whole goal with this particular standard, is change the culture of our defense supply chain, make security part of the decision-making process, make the leadership understand what it means and what the business risks are if you don't. And it's basically you get business or you don't. If you don't get business, your business goes out of business. So it's pretty impactful. It's not an IT issue. People's squeaky wheel, it's getting money to fix a hole. So level ones are folks that don't have controlled and classified, but they have, you know, contractual information that could be disruptive if it is released publicly. That's the majority of our defense industrial bases there, and they want you to follow the FAR clause, which is 17 basics for cybersecurity. And you can look those up, and that's what it'll show you. What they were doing with the CMMC 2.0 is they're actually going to make you self-attest to it and report it up to the DoD as what they call a Spur Score, which is a supplier performance score, which really it's to hold you accountable. Because if you report something to the DoD and something happens where you lied, they have evidence and intent to take action against you. So they are forcing the hands there. They don't, level ones are important, but that's not really where the real information is. The real information, controlled and classified, controlled technical information, is level 2. This is where there's 80,000 of the 300,000 that are carrying CUI that's passed down through flow downs to make the parts and assembly supply chains, that are carrying designs that anywhere in that supply chain, if they're hacked by a nation state or an adversary and the information is released, the whole chain is affected. So the real focus is on level 2. So if you have DFARS flow down today, you carry ITAR data in your internal systems, you are level 2. And so this is where they're using the NIST 800-171 standard of 110 controls, which are basically like access control, backup, recover, all the basics of protecting data. And there's actually 320 individual requirements that you're going to need to meet for those 110 controls. Those 320 requirements are what you're going to be assessed and audited against, and what the expectation is to do business with the DoD after the rulemaking is done in May 2023. So serious stuff. Enforcement's happening. Your business depends on it. So what we want to talk about, okay, now I know that, great. We've been talking about it for many years. So what do I do? So we want to go now into, okay, how do I figure out how to fill the gap? How do I get informed? How do I mitigate? How do I do it and not go out of business? I'll just mention on level 3, there's about 500 or so estimated suppliers out there that are kind of the high-end ones that are managing security operations centers, highly sensitive data that that the actual requirements have not been defined, but it'll be NIST 171, 110 controls plus some other requirements, and the DoD will define those in the near future. So that's CMMC 2.0. It's all out there. There's no questions. The documentation's there by the out in the DoD space. But the real question is, okay, great. I now know what I need to do. Where am I at today, and how do I fill the gap? And that's what every company has to figure out. Some people that have been following it, DFARS 2070 or 20, excuse me, the DFARS rule, and they've actually made the investments. They don't have much to worry about because they've already made those security investments. It's the ones that haven't made the investments that are now under the gun to get something done in the next year, or they lose business. Any questions on that for anybody? I know it's probably repeat. We've been talking about this for years, but okay. So as a supplier, I know that the government's throwing rules at me. There's non-compliance consequences, losing contracts. Okay, great. I know all of that. So what do I do? Well, it really comes down to the organization. So here's 3 areas that we typically see in our consulting with small, 5-person companies up to the Microsoft level. Is the first one is leadership understanding, as they still think it's something that's not going to affect them. They don't take it seriously. And until you have a leadership understanding, you really can't move the dial at the enterprise level. And this is an enterprise issue. It's not an IT issue. It's not an operations issue. It's not a business or legal. It's the company. And if you're a CEO or a compliance officer or even in-house counsel, your purpose in that company is to help understand the regulations to run your business and ensure that they're enforced. So if a leader is not doing that around CMMC or any of the other regulations that affect your business, then they're not doing their job. So they have to do their job. And until that's done, it's hard to move the ball forward. I can't tell you how many times an IT person says, God, we need to do all these things, but leadership is not funding us, right? So their hands are tied. So it starts at the top. It's an enterprise problem. So we really got to get education in there and understanding before you can really be effective and efficient in terms of moving the ball forward. And when it comes to minimizing costs, which we talked about, because you got to get there. How do you minimize costs? Well, you figure out how to get there, right? You don't go blindly. So, and that requires leaders to understand their posture, the roadmaps, so they can make effective investments to get there at the lowest cost and the most efficient way. And that all starts with leadership. So that's the first thing we'll talk about. The other thing is they don't know their compliance gaps and risks. It's kind of like buying a car. You can look at the outside of a car, looks good, it's painted pretty. You can open the door, look inside the seats. Yeah, it's worn, but it's still pretty good. I'm good with that. But when it comes to the engine, you gotta, I don't know, is the engine running right? Is it leaking in the valves? You have to go find a mechanic to actually check it out for you, so you can actually look all through the vehicle to really make an informed decision if this is a good car or not. Most organizations maybe haven't run a penetration or vulnerability test of their internal system, so they don't know if there's gaps that are wide open for an adversary to come in and connect to their invoicing system and issue an invoice to their company, and then the client pays it. I can tell you many hundreds of millions of dollars of companies that have actually had that happen to them. They would discover it later and have lost hundreds of thousands of dollars just because they didn't know what was going on. So you really got to know up front what your current security and compliance posture is. Then once you've done that, and there's ways to do that, then you're informed as a leader. And now I say, okay, wow, we need to get a multi-factor authentication. We know that that's a big return if we get that done, and we only have it on half our stuff. Let's get it on all of our stuff. So that said, oh, let's go invest in that. So you really have to understand your gaps and risks so you can make those informed decisions that are have the highest return, highest bang for the buck, to get what I call basic cyber hygiene up and running. Now there's a lot of small things because each of those 320 requirements that I talked about in NIST 171, each of those requires a solution to make sure that your company is meeting those. So it gets pretty detailed at times. Hopefully you can find a product or solution that covers, 50 or 60 of those requirements with a single solution. That makes it a lot easier versus having 320 unique solutions that have to be integrated and managed, right? You can see the complexity in that. So you really got to understand, be smart, look at your enterprise down and build your protections, breadth and depth of defense. And if you guys haven't heard about that, there's levels of defense, and you might know about zero trust. If that's the newest term, is it trust but verify everywhere that people move within your organization, protect the data. So that's, you got to understand where you're at before you can figure out where you're going to go. Required skills, capabilities, and funding. Frankly, there's 2 million cybersecurity jobs out there on LinkedIn. So there's a real deficit of people with the skills, which means there are a lot of companies without the capabilities, and there's a lot of companies that can't afford to hire a $250,000 CISO to run their security operations. So there's lots of gaps, and people have knowledge that to fill those gaps. So you got to come back and say, do I buy or build? Do I go and hire a person and try to train him, keep him up, pay that kind of money, or do I outsource it? So there's a lot of, how do I source these functions that I now need to meet to get compliant to maintain my business? So that's the other one. So it goes across legal, IT, business operations, so forth and so on. Lots of things to think about there. So, so now having said that, now we know all the challenges. How do I move forward? It's a basic engineering problem. I got to understand. I have to assess where I'm at. We talked about that. And once I know where I'm at, I plan, what the right size cost optimized solutions are for my organization based on my people, process, and technologies. If I'm all Microsoft, well, I probably want to fill my other gaps with some of the Microsoft tools. It doesn't matter. Maybe I look at something else, but somebody's got to make the decisions about what is strategic for my firm, not only to fill the gap, but to help me enhance my capability to compete in the marketplace. It's going to keep my cost to a minimum as I continue to evolve my business and grow my business. So it's a very strategic sort of conversation around cybersecurity. It's not just a tool that solves a gap. You got to think at the enterprise strategically and then have a plan to go and implement, which is that third area. Is now that you know what tools, how they fit together, how you're going to resource them, shared responsibilities, and you go and implement that to a point where you've got all of your controls up to snuff. You're meeting NIST 171, for example. You've got a pre-audit, so you're good to go. Then you get an assessment. Somebody third party comes in and validates it for you. That's great. Now you can get your cert. Now you can go and compete for DoD business and also be a leader out there winning new contracts outside the DoD, because you are a trusted supplier for whatever you're making, because you can demonstrate, hey, we're NIST 171, got 110 score. Find somebody else that can beat us, that can still make the product at a similar, even a better cost, right? So there are a lot of competitive advantages there. And then lastly, in the new world, a lot of people miss this part, is that not only do you have to get secure and compliant, you got to stay there. And that means you got to start thinking about compliance programs. You got to keep your documentation up to date. You've got to do an annual risk assessment. You've got to do change management so you don't negatively affect your environment and open up holes that attackers could come into. So you got to think holistically as cybersecurity is a program for your business and how it fits into your business operations. So that's kind of the end to end. And depending on where you're at, you're going to have different solutions that you can apply based on the skill set you have in your company. You can maybe do it yourself, or you're going to have to outsource it. Every company is going to be different in terms of how they find the right size, cost optimized solutions. So just quick ones. If here's everybody's got to make decisions. Well, gosh, that sounds like a lot of money. I don't want to do anything. Well, you're going to break your contracts and you're going to go out of business. So that's an option. You don't have to spend it. You can go in and fix the deficiencies and fix things to meet your CMMC contract and be a thought or an industry leader and go win more contracts. The cost differences are obviously are different. You can implement minimal solutions and kind of band-aid it to get through. But as we all know, if you band-aid things, you're always playing whack-a-mole fixing things. And so there's an operational issue and cost to do that. It's like buying a used car versus a new car, right? What am I willing to take on from a risk standpoint and maintenance standpoint? All those same sorts of things apply here in your cybersecurity role. And then you really want to protect your own data. So if you don't care about your data, you don't want to secure it, then that's fine. You can lose it. But really, most of us are going to want to fix it, stay in business, and actually be a low risk provider and go win more business if you're a savvy company, you're serious about the industry and cybersecurity. So those are just things. So here's my here's kind of the money slide. So what do you need to think about, right, to make things affordable? What you got to be able to be smart about your decisions. So leadership has to be educated. They have to understand where they're at, so they can make the fastest path that's efficient, it's optimized for your company to reduce the ultimately going down wrong paths and then having to back out and go down different paths. I mean, that's obviously, we've all done that before. You haven't well thought through something, and you throw a lot of money away on the wrong solution or the wrong approach, right? You want to make sure that you get a really good approach and follow through. That's going to be the most efficient and cost effective for you. The next one is buy versus build. If you're in the business of making parts, do you want to be in the business of hiring an entire IT, security, and compliance staff to manage hardware and software on premise when it's not your core competency and you got to keep them trained? Probably not. I mean, I'd rather put that investment into making better parts and growing that business, and then outsource, maybe my security operations to somebody that can do it efficiently, that keeps people trained. So there's this whole shared responsibility. What do I want to be in? And who do I want to partner with? It takes a village to climb the mountain. People can go fast if they do it by themselves, but man, they're going to burn out. They may not even make it to the top. You need a village to go to the top and sustain yourself. So you need to build your team of trusted advisors, trusted suppliers with the right equipment, and do that in a cost-effective way. And you have options, like I mentioned earlier. You can go out and just find a car on the side of the street that they left the keys in and take that and go, and it might be good enough. Or buy a low-end car to get you from point A to point B. You have to look at how much you want to spend and the risk you want to take on to do that. So, for example, I think everybody needs a qualified guide. Somebody like, I don't know if I'm qualified, but I can help you make right decisions. So if you think about how an attorney helps an organization, they're helping you make decisions about contracts, merger and acquisition, things that you as a CEO don't know, and you look for advice so you don't make those wrong decisions and you don't get yourself in hot water. That's why, because cybersecurity is so broad, you need a qualified guide, somebody that can be like your attorney, but it's more of a cybersecurity, I don't call ourselves an attorney, but a cybersecurity guide, consultant, trusted advisor that helps walk the journey with you. It'll save you a lot of heartache and understanding of, should I go this way or this way? And this person can help you make those decisions and validate those. So how do you find them? Attend CMC webinars like this, connect with leaders, in a variety of different ways, because it's all about trust and relationships. So you need to trust these people because your business depends on it. A lot of people are out there on LinkedIn, joining industry groups, engaging and building relationships. And there's a lot of great advice. So people just want to help. They want the defense industry to be successful, to protect our country. So, frankly, I do a lot of free webinars. I do a lot of free content delivery just to help companies, because at the end of the day, it keeps our companies in business and it protects our country. So there's a lot of folks out there like that, but you need to engage. You can't sit back. They're not going to find you. They're really busy. Like we said, there's 2 million short of cybersecurity. And a lot of these cybersecurity guys are, they're very technical in nature. They're doing monitoring, they're running a SOC. Those are folks who can help you with a particular tactical area, but you need to find somebody that's been there, done that. And I would say gray hair, but bald guys and gray hair are the ones you're looking for that can really help guide you. So look for those. I think that's really probably the most important thing as a leader. Find somebody you trust. Find somebody who walks with you. Because it's a lifetime journey. It's not going away. It's not one and done. It's get there, stay there. So you got to have the right set of teams. That's probably the number one and most important thing from an organizational standpoint. So if you get down to how do I reduce my cost within my organization? One of the best ways to do that is to take all the sensitive data that you're trying to protect and move it to the smallest footprint that you can within your organizations. Because once you've done that, you have a much smaller area to secure. So the cost of securing it is going to be less. Where if the data is spread throughout your organizations, you got to protect it everywhere, and it's complex, it's expensive. So minimize your, what I call controlled and classified information boundary, or you can say your own internal IP, anything that's sensitive. See if you can re-engineer your workflows, consolidate the data into a single tool, single platform, separate your commercial from your defense information, for example, and really isolate that, because that really reduces your risk and the cost of protecting that. So that's the first thing I do. That's before you do tools. It's about business. Again, the next one, once you've got it in a place, identify the gaps that you have around protecting that information, right? Once you know where it's at now you can assess. You can self-assess. You can do a 110 self-assessment. There are a lot of free ones out there. Do it yourself, either level 1, level 2, best that you can. But you really, there's a lot of people that have reported scores like 105 up in the Spur score, and they really believe that they're 105. But if you guys didn't know, DIBCAC doesn't believe most of the scores that are over 100. So they're going out and randomly talking to those folks that have reported Spur scores over 100 and say, hey, show me your system security plan. Or what? Your system security plan. Well, we don't have one of those. Well, did you know that just having a system security plan is 100 points? So if you don't have one, how can you have 105? Oh, so suddenly, people just don't understand what the rigor and expectations are. So you may get pinged here in the next few months by DIBCAC, which is the DoD auditor. Say, show me your goods, and they're going to come back and say, no, that's not. No, you really are around a minus 150. And I can tell you lots of examples with my clients that we educated and said, no, you really fall down to the minuses, and you really need to beef it up before you get audited. So there's a lot of that lack of education, understanding. Again, it comes back to skill sets. So when you do your self-assessments, get somebody to come in and do an assurance. You don't have to do a full deep dive, have somebody build a system security plan, all that stuff. Have them just come in and look at your system security plan, some of your documentation, and really say, hey, you're up to snuff. And you can do that fairly inexpensively, but at least you're on track and on target. And if you're not, you can redirect and get the right investments. If you're doing the right way, at least and you can continue to invest in that way. So that's a good idea, to just have somebody review your documentation and your gaps. Then once you know really that these are real gaps, prioritize your gaps, because we all know that there's 320 requirements, but if you get 50 of them that still are partial or need to be filled, how are you going to do that? Really take a risk-based approach, right? And the DoD has given us insight into what the highest risk controls are. So when you file your Spur score today, things like access control have a score of a 5, which means it's really, really important. Others have a score of a 3. And so when they do that aggregated calculation to come up with your Spur score, they're giving a lot more value to access control. So go and look at that and say, okay, do I have any gaps in these high critical areas like access control or incident response? If I do, there you go. That's what you want to focus on. Now you've got priority, and it's going to lower your risk the fastest. And then you can say, okay, great. I know the top three I'm going to go after. And then you say, okay, how do I mitigate these gaps? Well, is there any free content out there that I can use? Let's just use incident response plan, which means, what do I do if I do get breached? Who does what? Who do I contact? How do I shut down my system, prevent further disruption and cost? Well, don't know if you all knew, but the CISA, which is our, I can't remember the acronym name, but it's a government organization. It's now been tasked to protecting the country around cybersecurity. They have a lot of different free resources out there. And one of them is an incident response template. You could go out and grab that template, and it talks about a whole process, and fill in the names, test it out in your organization, and boom, you've been able to do that on your own. If you have the do-it-yourself mentality, or you have somebody that's capable of doing that. So you can do it very inexpensively. But if you can't, you could always hire somebody to come in and help you interview people, write down your workflow processes, how do you do it for other areas, and write up something that really works for you, kind of a custom one. It's going to cost you money, but you still get to the end point. So you have choices. It's just, where do you want to invest? How much do you want to be shared resources? And then the other one is you want to make sure you have credible suppliers. I can't tell you how many times that I've talked to companies that bought a product or a tool or a service, said, hey, $5,000, I'll get you CMMC compliant in 2 weeks. And people get really disappointed on that. And because, as I talked about, there's 320 requirements, and what tool or person do you know that knows all of that? none of us, not even me. I mean, I know people that could probably help us, and that's why it really takes that ecosystem and a team to go do that. So don't be stupid. Go figure out suppliers that are credible. There's a group that I'm working with called the CMMC Standards Council, which includes Microsoft, DTC, CORTAC, and probably 30 or 40 other coal-fire, some of the C3POs that really are saying, hey, let's come together as an industry to build solutions that people can trust and be a safe harbor. So when they go, they know where to go versus the other 9,000 companies that are just outselling their wares and trying to sell, but don't really solve the problem for you. So there's groups like that being formed. Funding, a lot of grants coming, a lot of the latest regulations in Congress. There's money in there. Impact Washington, PNDC, PNA are always looking to grab money, bring it in so the supplier base can use it. And then, if you know you're going to get audited, engage early with a C3PO. You might even want to have them do a pre-assessment that they kind of say, yeah, no. They won't give you recommendations, but they can give you at least an idea if you passing or not. And then you hire them actually do the audit, so you have that continuity between them. So you got to plan ahead for that. You got to spend a little extra money, but it's going to save you a lot of grief when you do your actual audit. There's no surprises, and then you can get your certification, continue to get your contracts. And then lastly, once you get there, stay there. You got to have a GRC tool to manage and keep track of it, assign tasks to people to report evidence. There's a lot of moving parts that need to be managed well. No one person, no Excel spreadsheet will probably do that unless it's a one-man show. So those are, there are some, I don't know if there are any free tools out there, but there are some that are fairly low cost. And if you have questions about any of these things, you can send an email to me later and I give you a list of folks that I think you can talk to. But I just wanted to show you that here's the CISA. This is all free. It's funded in conjunction with NIST, which is a federal agency, and CISA to basically get the word out about, if you all hear shields up, that's the national mantra right now from CISA. They have a lot of things like cyber essentials. Like I mentioned, there's got toolkits for incident response plans, lots of free stuff out there. Somebody just has to pull it together for your organization and make it work for you, or you get some help. So that's where the cost optimization goes there. And tools are a little bit different. If you need Microsoft for your office, there's not a lot of choices out there that are secure, but there are some choices that you can look at. Last slide, then I'll move on. I think I'm running late. I'll go fast for this. This is an enterprise problem, and you need integrated approaches to get to the right place efficiently. Leaders need to be educated. Get them educated. It's time to pay up. It's the cost of doing business today. Shortcuts won't get you there anymore. And actually negligence will cost you money. There's a lot of lawsuits for negligent cybersecurity that are coming up with Colonial Pipeline, some of the hospitals where people are saying, hey, you duped me. You cost me something. You were negligent in terms of your protecting my data. So there's a lot of third-party tort suits starting up that'll really drive behavioral change for the commercial industry because people are going to have to pay money. It's not even regulations, it's money. You need a third-party workforce. Do you want to invest inside or do you want to find partners? Identify external funding, right? You're going to have to probably tin cup that. You won't get your whole journey paid for in one big lump sum money, but you can at least move forward step by step. We worked with Impact Washington and they had some funding that helped several organizations at least do a readiness assessment to know where they're at so they can make informed decisions. And then you really need to get started now. You got a year, but once you get to the end of that year, everybody that has been a laggard is going to want the limited resources, and so prices are going to go way up, and it's going to take a lot more time to actually get anybody's attention. So it's a supply and demand thing. The longer you wait, the more demand. Supply is not growing that fast today. And then don't wait. Non-compliance costs are increasing quick, right? We're seeing it across the board from regulatory for even cyber insurance. If you're not doing that, you're not getting the coverage you need. You're not getting your loans because you're too risky of a business. There's a ton of different things that affect just your day-to-day business around cybersecurity. So you really need to invest in this and look at it as a business and make right investments that affect and address all of the areas of risk for you now. So I think that's all I had. So sorry it took so long. Denise?
Yeah, thank you, Jerry. I apologize for my voice. It's a little Marlena Dietrich today, but I have a question for you. This is really daunting for, your small and medium businesses. Is the price the same whether you have one employee or 1,000, or does it fluctuate? Is it commiserate with the size of your company?
It does vary, right? If you're having somebody come in and kind of look at all your processes, procedures for 5 or 6 different facilities, you got a lot of interviews that you got to pay somebody to do and assess. But if you're a 5-person show, you're in one facility and you can interview one person, just the labor time is a lot shorter. So smaller companies will be lower from an assessment. And then if you move all your data to the cloud, moving 5 licenses and users to a Microsoft cloud is a lot less expensive than 100 users. So it depends on the size and the complexity of your business and what level of risk you're willing to take and the types of products that you want to buy. So it's very complex, and that's why each company has to kind of find the right size solutions for their business, and then find the best cost alternatives that are strategic as well as tactical.
I
wish I had a silver bullet.
Yeah, I wish you did too. So we've got legislators or representatives on the call. So I hope that we can lean in on some of that congressional support to help out with a little bit more of this. I also want to point out that the MEP is nationwide, and we've been talking about Impact Washington. They're definitely our partner in this. But if you're not from Washington, and I know many of you are not, you also have an MEP in your state, and simply email PNDC and we can point you out, or Damon Nix probably would be a better resource for you to email. And I think he put his email address in the chat to find out who your representative is in the MEP network. And he's got several of his account executives on the call today, so they also would be able to help you. So let's move on to the panel. My name is Denise Reiser, and I'm the Market Development Director, and I have laryngitis. It's undiagnosed because my husband doesn't want me to get medicine for it because it might, it's kind of like in my no talking portion of the program. So I apologize if I feel fine. I just can't talk. We have a great panel coming up. We have 3 experts in cybersecurity. We have Tori Hoyt, from Black Oak, Raj from InTech, and Sam Leishman from Crown Infosec. So I want you 3 to go ahead and introduce yourself a little, who you are and who you work for. So we'll start with you, Sam.
Hi, I'm Sam Leishman. Thank you, Denise, for having me here. I'm the founder and CEO of Crown Infosec. I focus on education mainly, educating people what they need to do, what resources they can use, what it's free, helping them navigate their path and what to do. I also have an ecosystem that I can refer you to if you need an MSP or if you need an MSSP. Who do I need to turn to? Where can I go? So that's what we focus on.
Very good. Next up is Raj.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Raj Sidhu. I'm the founder and president of InTech Consulting, and I've been involved with what is now, well, not yet, but what will be CMMC 2.0 from the time that DFARS flow down to DFARS interim rules. So we've been working through this for a number of years for a number of our clients. And we specifically focus on small to medium-sized businesses. So when Denise, when you asked earlier about, how do you make this work for, the 5-person, the 10-person, the 50-person shops, certainly I get excited, and I'm happy to share some of our practices, some of what we've done to help mitigate some of the risk and reduce costs for people on their journey.
And next up is Tori from Black Oak.
Hello, my name.
You're muted, Tori.
Hi, I'm Tori. I work for Black Oak Security as a consultant. I am a registered provider with the CMMC. I am also a pending CMMC certified CMMC professional. I consult on various requirements, and I am also a vice president of information security and cybersecurity risk and assurance for a West Coast financial institution focusing on cybersecurity and small business implementations.
Very good. This next part is supposed to be informal and participatory. So if you have a question, let myself or Carly or I think Bailey or Bud know in the chat, and we'll ask it for you. If you want to ask it yourself, just raise your hand, and hopefully one of us will notice that you have your hand raised. And feel free to do that as well. And actually, before I go any further, I want to introduce our executive director, Bud Blake. He's pretty new to the company. He's down there. Wave a little bit, Bud, if you want. He's my new boss, so all complaints about me go straight to Bud.
Thank you.
First up, I have a question, and I'm going to let Sam tackle this first. So besides CMMC, which is kind of a hot topic, what other cybersecurity impacts are affecting small and medium suppliers? Sam, you want to take a stab at that?
Sure. Thank you, Denise. So when you think of all these regulations and everything, we got to remember that it's just not an IT problem, but a business problem. It affects you financially. Banks are beginning to require information. Are you secure? What is your cybersecurity posture before they're giving out loans? Insurance regulations, cyber insurance has increased. They're starting to ask questions. Again, what is your cybersecurity posture? What do you have implemented? If you have certain things that you can show that you're doing, you can get a lower rate on your cyber insurance. Business disruption, you get hacked and you're down for 4 months. There's a statistic that shows that small businesses that get hacked, if they don't recover within 4 months, they don't recover at all. And I believe it's over 60% of businesses that get hacked are small businesses. So those are 3 very critical ones right there. We know of a business locally that got hacked and had to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in ransomware. They fortunately had it and were able to spend it, to pay it, but it cost them dearly. People will say, I don't have a budget for, cybersecurity. Well, do you have a budget for that? Or do you have the money to pay the ransomware when it comes? Do you know where to go and who to contact? So those are some pretty significant impacts besides the regulations that we're seeing.
Very good. Does anyone else want to take that?
I think one of the things that we have to do as business operators and business owners is think a little differently about our how we're protecting our data and our digital assets. Instead of having regulations force us into doing some of these things, there's some CMMC level 1. There's some really easy controls that everyone should implement. In fact, we as a managed security and services provider, which is essentially what we do is we help you solve your IT problems, and we also make sure that cybersecurity is at the forefront of that. And as a MSSP, all of our clients get the same protections, the same layers of protections for their business and their digital assets. So I just I wish that more and more people that I talk to would focus on and understand the risk that they have to their business and their digital assets, and what they need to do to protect that. And sometimes it is a really, really simple fix. And like Jerry mentioned earlier, what we've learned is the smaller you are, the more nimble you are, the easier it is for us to guide you towards that goal. So, if we can start with just saying and acknowledging that we have a problem, that we need to look at, first of all, classify our data. We know what kind of data exists. That's a first thing to do so that we can understand what all you need to protect. But it's really, really simple things. Instead of focusing on completion of a certification, I think it needs to be, how do we protect our environments first?
Very good. Tori, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I think I just have some statistics that might help form the conversation or the idea for those attending today. The National Cybersecurity Alliance performed a survey and a study through 2020 and 2021. 88% of small businesses believe that they were highly at risk for a cybersecurity incident or an information security incident. 63% of those small businesses said that cybersecurity was a high priority in their small business plan. However, only 46% of those small businesses actually felt prepared to respond. And when you look at the statistics, the outcomes of an actual cybersecurity breach or an information security incident, 28% of all small businesses between 2020 and 2021 experienced a data breach. 37% suffered significant financial loss from those data breaches. 25% were forced into bankruptcy over that data breach, and 10% of all small businesses go out of business every year due to a cybersecurity incident. So prioritizing it and making sure that you understand the cost associated with it and what the best choices are for your cybersecurity and information security plan as adjusted to the size and risk of your business is really, really important for the successful long-term operation of your small business, and also, making sure that you're not putting yourself in a position of bankruptcy or maybe even going out of business due to an incident.
Sure.
Denise, just to add to that, really good points, Tori. But just to add to that, one of the things that I do not hear often is, one of the things that I hear more often is we don't have the money, we don't have the budget to go through this process. What I don't hear is how are we going to take, if we go through this journey, we implement all of these controls, and we're a safer organization to do business with, how do we market that? How do we include that cost into our agreements, into our contracts, so that way we get that money back? That's one of the things where, as I'm working with, as our team's working with our primes and sub clients, working through their CMMC journey, one of the things that we try to get them to do is to put all of their costs under a specific GL code, so that way you can track exactly how much money you're spending as part of this being on the CMMC journey. And if you can track that and you understand how much money that is, you can actually get that back. You put that into your contracts as part of your part of your line item, or however you end up doing your contracts. But that's the one thing that I don't understand how. I guess I do as a business owner. I do understand, because that's money that you have to put up front, but then you can make that back as you conduct business. So that's one thing that doesn't get talked about very often as I'm in these webinars, and I want to make sure that everyone understands that you should be asking for that money back, essentially adding to your costs.
I completely agree with what Raj is saying. I think what I tend to see from my experience is that most people focus on having a certain regulation or a certain standard that they feel they have to implement or become compliant with, instead of, as a small business, taking a step back and really understanding what is the risk? What do I have to do? Where are my vulnerabilities? How do I identify those risks that have to be mitigated versus those that I can approach growing in the future? You always want to have a risk-based approach with your information security and cybersecurity plans that's scalable. And scalability should match whatever your 4 or 5-year or 10-year business plan looks like, because as you want to grow your business, you want to take on different forms of business. You want to make sure that those contracts, those vendors, those service providers that you're going after understand how to help and support and mature and grow your entire platform so that you can continue to take on versatile businesses with maybe multiple sets of regulatory or standardized requirements. So for instance, if you're asking somebody to come in and do maybe a CMMC evaluation, you should be contracting with a third party service or a consultant, much like Black Oak Security, that says, hey, we'll help you get there, but what other businesses are you focused on? If we knock out CMMC and we have a growth plan for you and you want to be able to demonstrate ISO 27000, where are those controls compatible? Where's your deltas so that we can help focus on your long-term goals, your long-term plan? Every set of compliance across, various standards typically map to each other. So make sure that you understand your risk, your current risk. Make sure that you understand where you want to go, and then work with people that will help you implement not only what you need, but give you visibility to your ongoing roadmap that supports the growth of your business. Don't narrowly focus on a single thing. That's not cost effective. And it's also not the best way to protect your company from the actual breaches and the actual risk that you're really looking to mitigate.
Very good. Next question. Is there a prioritization of importance that we can sort of take this in little chunks and bite off the expenses that we can absorb in little pieces as we go along this journey? And I'll start this one with Raj.
Yes, certainly. One of the things I think that helps is, as Jerry mentioned, there's a ton of free resources out there. I mean, you can start off with, if you have an internal team, an IT person or IT team, you can really sit down, focus on what you need done, and it's even as simple as if you contact us, we'll give you a free project template that essentially has step 1 through step 100 and whatever the last step may be, but it basically walks you through, won't hold your hand, but it'll start off with what's the first thing that you need to do, and that may be, do you have an acceptable use policy? Let's start with that. Do you even escort visitors? Do you keep their logs? There's some really, really simple things that do not require any kind of money that you can implement, especially as you're starting your journey and you may not have the budget. And then there's, as Jerry mentioned as well, there's also funding. We've worked with several of our clients to get them funding from Impact Washington so that they can start their journey. So there's a lot of things that you can do that are very, very easy to start with. The first thing I would suggest is you find somebody that you can talk to that understands your constraints, whether they be budget or resources. But the very first thing that you need to do is just get started, talk to someone, and educate yourself. and then, you know, just put some effort into it, put a team together, put some goals together. These things, most of these things do not cost you any money. You can do a lot of this yourself. I think a lot of organizations that we talk to that tell us, you know, they don't have the budget, they don't understand the risk that they are imposing on their organization.
Very good. Sam, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, knowing your risk, knowing what you have, seeking somebody that you trust. As Jerry said, a trusted advisor. They don't have to be bald and gray hair. There's plenty of women out here who are doing this. Sometimes it can be as simple as, like, one of the biggest ways that people get into is phishing emails. Understand that. Look and see what's available for cyber training, cybersecurity. There's companies out there that are free that'll, you know, and on the web, phishing videos, and how do you recognize that? So there's things like that. Having, you know, looking at your policies and procedures. Do you have a plan? What if you get hacked? Do you have the resource? Do you know who to call? Those kinds of things are simple, doesn't cost a lot of money, but basically education, knowing your risk, and finding somebody that you trust who can talk.
Very good. And how about you? Let's see, Tori.
Yeah, I agree with Sam. That's the right course. The best starting place for any business at any size is sitting down and performing a risk assessment. You don't have to know a ton about IT to sit down and say, what are the risks associated with somebody, you know, getting into my email? What are the risks associated with somebody getting into my network? What if somebody can physically walk in and access my servers? I'm using a cloud space. What does that mean? How can I protect the data that is being received, and how can I keep the people out that shouldn't be getting into my data? It's really interesting that if you look at the top 4 or 5 identifications of why breaches occur, the number 1 is underfunded or inadequate IT staff. You know, a lot of people look to save money by this great word that everybody hates so much, outsourcing, right? You want to find the partner that can support you and outsource that subject matter expertise to help protect you. I think number 2 is probably the most surprising, at least to me, and it's lack of employee training. It's simply making sure that your employees understand what they should and should not be doing in their work environment. And number 3 is network security. You know, that's always going to be super important. So as you're sitting down and you're thinking about chunking things out, think of those top 3, right? Do I have a really good IT staff? Do they know their stuff? Am I funding it correctly? Is there risk in me underfunding it? 2, am I training my employees appropriately? Do they understand what phishing and vishing and all of these other, you know, terms are that would allow somebody in through the back door? And then do I, as a business owner, or does my very adequate IT staff understand network security? And what am I doing in that area? And if that's outsourced, can I go to my outsourced vendor and say, hey, I want to see some evidence on how you secure my network, and I want to understand what you're doing to monitor that network. And then, you know, once your risk assessment is done and you've looked at those 3, then start questioning all of the other risks that you have down there and figure out, am I going to transfer this risk? You know, that's my favorite term, transfer of risk, which essentially means outsourcing, right? Or do I have an adequate staff here to really address this risk in the way it needs to be addressed?
And just to add to what Tori said, Denise, one of the things that we're constantly hearing when we go and talk to a prospect about their CMMC journey, that it's an IT. There's always 3 people from IT, and usually one operations person or one of the executives. And it's clear to me at that point that the organization just does not understand, that this is not an IT problem. It's not something that the IT department can just provide a solution for, because, for example, one of the very first steps for us and for you as business owners and operators, what it should be is your data classification policy. That doesn't even involve IT, in any way. So when you are taking on a contract, what is considered confidential? What is considered CUI? What is FCI? Have you identified that? Do you have a process that says this is what we do with this type of data? Do you have a policy? And I think that gets missed in a lot of conversations, and we'll head down towards our goal, and then it becomes, well, how do we hunt down who's responsible for this data? And unfortunately, a lot of folks that we've worked with, they don't have that process down. And again, that has nothing to do with IT. That should be, contracts administration. It should be more of the business development folks that should understand that. And then operations should very much understand how that data is going to flow in their systems. And then IT comes in, but IT should just be simply responsible for applying a template. We have set up a template. Here's how the data will flow. If the data is tagged as a CUI or confidential or private, then this is how it gets dealt with. And that's something that doesn't require any money. That doesn't require usually any products. So it's something that you can do on your own. It just takes a little bit to make sure that everyone that knows about these contracts is sitting at the same table. But that's a really crucial step that gets missed.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's important to understand that that's also scalable. Again, you're looking at the risk of your company. Am I a 1 to 5 person company? How does that really apply to me versus a 1 to 500 or 1 to 1,000 person company? How complex is it? The complexity of the implementation of your solution is where the dollars matter. So you're looking at it and saying, how does this apply? I don't need to create a solution for my 1 to 5 or 1 to 10 or 1 to 15 person company that is so complex that you would typically see it at a 1 to 1,000 person company. It's CMMC, interestingly enough, is about demonstrating reasonableness. I also happen to hold my CISA. I have been a cybersecurity and information security auditor for years. The complexity in which you need to demonstrate evidence in an audit is currently, and CMMC is consistently updating its requirements, but not necessarily the standard for CMMC. It's reasonableness. It's being able to demonstrate that you understand the requirement and that you've applied it at a reasonable level for your risk. So keeping that in mind, there's flexibility for you to design your solution in a way that is cost effective and still meets the spirit and or the idea of controlling whatever, information may apply to your organization based on however many people have access to it.
Okay. Damon, I didn't talk about this before, but would you like to address the grants? Several people have talked about the grants. Do you know the landscape of that going forward and what we could potentially be looking at?
Yeah, we had grants. They're in the past. there's hope that there will be funding in the future. We continue to work with our partners at NIST MEP, and we know that's a major priority for them. Advanced manufacturing and cybersecurity is a major pillar. There's a projection that in the next fiscal year, which begins October, in the president's budget, there's a large increase for MEP. A lot of that funding would be targeted to competitive grant programs around workforce, supply chain, and advanced manufacturing cybersecurity, those being the three big focus areas for NIST MEP. So we're very hopeful that later in the year, there are going to be some opportunities for us to tap into that. Currently, from a federal perspective, no, there's not any active federal funding that we have access to here in Washington. There is legacy state funding that we can tap into for individuals, potentially, if the situation is right, if you have enough people in your organization who are involved. There's some incumbent worker training programs that we can scale a cybersecurity learn and implementation type project into. So certainly we'd love to talk with you about that. We're looking very actively at how do we make things more sustainable, particularly for small, mid-sized manufacturers. We have some models that are more cohort focused, a mix of groups, of companies working together for what's shared, and then having some one-on-one coaching for the unique specific aspects of an implementation that affect them, particularly around say a NIST 800-171 implementation. So those are quite cost effective. So if you can find a friend or two in your supply chain or in your network, or if we can help introduce you to some other companies who are interested, that's one of the most cost-effective ways right now. That doesn't involve a grant. That's something we can just get going pretty quickly. So yeah, that's the state of affairs from the funding perspective.
Sorry, and I just gave you that without any warning. But
no, that's fine.
Super helpful. I do want to ask, is that available in other states, or is that the cohort program that you referenced? Do other states have that same sort of?
That's something that InTech Washington is working on. I know, if you're in Oregon, OMEP has internal cybersecurity resources, and they're working on their programs. And certainly I'm sure they have their own approach. But yeah, I can connect you with them. But and we collaborate with OMEP quite a bit. So,
okay.
If you're an Oregon-based company, and there's an opportunity to combine Oregon and Washington companies together in an effort, we'll absolutely work together to try to make that happen.
Okay. And there are some Idaho folks, and I think you.
In Idaho as well. Yeah, Tech Help
yeah.
out of Boise State. Very good friends with them.
Very good. And I have one last question here. Tools, tips, tricks, anything that a business can do? Have you heard of anything that can help them get started and manage some of the costs of this? So I don't know, Jerry, do you want to take this to start with, or I know you're not on the panel.
That's all right. I can slip in if you let me.
Okay, go ahead.
Frankly, it comes back to how much you want to invest in your workforce to support cybersecurity, IT, compliance versus your core business. So the question is, do I build it myself? It's expensive to build a cybersecurity and IT team. Or do I transfer the risk and the cost to like a Microsoft and have them host all of the servers, have them do the operations, hire a managed service provider like InTech that I can trust, that is optimized and efficient, and really move from a CapEx model, buy it all up front, to move it to an operation model where I pay as I consume it, subscription-based model. For me as a company and trying to minimize my expenditures and cost outlays, I like an operational model because I scale up and down as my business changes. And plus all that risk is on them, and they have accountability to me to meet those expectations. So that's why that's the best approach that I have. And I tell everybody, move it to the cloud, outsource as much as you can, be a cloud first company and focus on your business and sleep well at night with high security in the cloud. If you have to pay a little bit more for high security, I would do that because you're going to sleep better in the cloud and you're going to be a differentiator factor. So that's kind of my overall strategy about transferring risk to the cloud.
Okay,
And-
Raj, you have any
Yeah.
tips?
Yeah, so one of the things we've been doing, and I'm sure, Jerry and Tori, I'm sure everyone is that's in this space is doing the same thing, is, we're vetting, we have been vetting products, vendors, all of that. So for the past 4.5 years, so, when DNS filtering is one of the controls that, hey, you need to implement DNS filtering. Well, we have 4 vendors that we vetted that, if you are a 2,000 person company, we'd recommend that you go with X vendor. But if you are a 5-person company, we're going to go with vendor Y, because, you really don't need the bells and whistles that come with, that are needed in this enterprise world. So I think, having the right advisor, having the right person, having the right company that is able to guide you is the most crucial thing that's going to help you save money to start, and save money in the long run. So, do your due diligence. Make sure you're working with folks that understand, and not only understand CMMC, but you need to have someone that understands your industry, your business, so that way they can help you, not just through the CMMC journey, but help you implement that into your business and make sure that it all works in the end. But there's lots of ways to save money. The best thing that you can do is get started. There's free resources all over the place. If you email me, I can help you with that. I'm sure any of the folks that were here would love to help.
Yeah, I just want to add that Jane just made a great point that I didn't copy, is even though if you moved all your data into the cloud, so you have nothing on premise, transferred all that risk, moved to an operational model, they can only do so much in the cloud. You are still responsible as the organization for the protection of that data. So if you pick the wrong vendor or something goes wrong, you're still responsible. So you need to make sure that you understand, as the owner of the data, what your role is, like password to access that information. You still have to have strong passwords, 2-factor authentication, all that stuff to prevent access to that data. And if you don't, it's not the problem of a Microsoft or a third party that you've moved your data, it's yours. You have that responsibility still. And you're the one that's being audited, not the third party. They're a partner that come alongside you, but you're still on point for protecting the data based on the contract that you have with the DoD. So I just wanted to highlight that.
And to add to that, Jerry, really quickly, I get this often as well, where you're working with somebody and they're like, oh yeah, our emails in the cloud, our file shares, everything is in SharePoint, and we're secure. I read somewhere that Office 365 is compliant. That is wrong. Just putting yourself into the basic Office, is not compliant. So there's steps you need to follow. There's special licensing. There's controls that need to be in place in order for you to say that you are compliant. So do not just Google and say, yes, Office 365 is compliant, so I'm going to move, or Gmail, I'm going to mitigate my risk and I'm going to put it all in the cloud. That is not a good idea. You need to make sure you do your due diligence.
Yep.
Very good. So I'm going to end it right there. As always, I think we all should thank InTech Washington for their leaning in on this topic and many others. If you're a manufacturer and you haven't had an InTech Washington account executive into your plant floor, you're missing out. These folks can help you. I don't know if it costs anything to have them come in and assess your business. I doubt it. Damon's probably going to tell me here in a second. So lean into those guys. They're your friends and they want to help you. The past forums, you're seeing it on your screen now. These are from all the way from last July. Those are recorded in an archive system on the InTech Washington website and the InTech Washington YouTube channel, including this particular one will be up probably later this week. I don't know how long it takes them to prepare the video, but they will prepare it and get it up there really quick for your easy reference. We do have another one of these coming up on June 14th. Please register. These are free. So it doesn't take like an hour and a half to make sure you have the latest and greatest. And we're talking about the topics in a week. So we'll have a topic for you very, very soon. If you have ideas for a topic that you want us to talk about, please don't hesitate to email somebody from PNDC or from Impact Washington, and they will get that to us. That's it. In the back of the room is my friend Bailey. She works with us and she's been putting those acronyms in the chat. I can't thank her enough for that. And Damon, did you have any last comments?
Well, one, just to respond, yeah, it's absolutely no cost to have your local Impact Washington account executive, representative, person who covers your region or territory to come visit with you, talk with you, help you assess your needs. That's our goal. We want to be trusted advisors to get you connected with the right resources and the right people to help you solve your problems. So absolutely, please reach out to us or the MEP that's in your state, Manufacturing Extension Partnership in your state. Also, just, yeah, thank you. Just echo everything you just said there. Thank you so much to everyone for coming, and looking forward to next month's cybersecurity. Thanks to all the speakers today.
Thank you very much. And I'll give you back a few minutes of your day. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
You know, it's funny.